everyone, my name is Jacqueline, and I'm here with ESFI's EndGame, and I'll be taking over the show as of this episode. It's episode 4, and with me I have Jason Bass. So all of you may know him as the Chief Operating Officer of Complexity Gaming, which is powerhouse team that owns everything from Great StarCraft 2 team with people like QXC, Ryan, and CatZ. Then we also have Complexity Cross Counter with Gutex, Mike Ross, and also their Final Boss Halo team. You may not know him as one of the most influential people working within the North American esports scene, but he is one of the men who's very under the radar but very influential. He's done everything from help create a structure of or business model structure for GotFrag. He was the director of online for the Championship Gaming Series, the director of marketing for SIVO, and now you know him as the COO of Complexity Gaming, where he currently resides within esports. So welcome, Jason. I'm stoked to have you on.
It's good to be here. Thanks for having me.
How's it going in Houston today?
Other than being rainy, it's pretty good. Can't complain.
So I guess to get started, can you tell me a bit about how you got into gaming and esports specifically?
Counter-Strike. It was kind of where I began and kind of where, for a lot of this all began. So I played early betas and I was pretty good. Played with guys like K-Sharp and Bullseye on my team for a long time, and I quit as I got married prior to the whole esports phenomena starting, so I never really played at the quote-unquote professional level. But due to my interest in the game, I continued to play just more on a casual basis, and I was asked by one of the guys at GotFrag when it first started, because I was doing reviews for Cal Maine, like previews of matches and stuff like that, to come do it for them. And due to my age and work experience and things like that, I was kind of rapidly promoted through the ranks at GotFrag, and before I knew it, I was vice president of operations over there, working for Lee Chen, and just helping to grow that, and spent many years of not making a dime and working really hard at doing something I believed in, and trying to convince the wife that someday this was going to all pay off, and this would be a real job, if you will. And I got there for a little while, and we're kind of right on the cusp again. So,
going back to your time with Counter-Strike, do you ever wish that you could go back and be a player at all?
I think I've made the right decisions in my life. In some ways, if I were young and single, it would be fun and exciting. But it's a hard life. It's just lots of work goes into that, lots of playtime, lots of missing out on everything else that's going on in your life. So no, I don't wish I could go back and be a professional gamer.
I honestly don't think I could do it. Like, just looking at the guys, I couldn't do it. So during your time at GotFrag, what did you do, and what was your most memorable experience?
Well, what did I do? That's a really broad question. With esports companies, you kind of wear many hats. So, you do everything from content management to managing the staff to handling the finances and the payroll, and trying to work on generating business and selling advertising space at GotFrag and sponsorships. I mean, you name it, I pretty much did it at some point or another at GotFrag, and the same goes for Complexity today. I think one of my more memorable experiences was probably I don't even remember the name, but there was a CPL, probably the last one before it kind of really went downhill, but we had about 24 GotFrag staff members there, all on their shirts and all that kind of stuff, and that was just a kind of a proud moment. It was, we'd finally kind of made it. We had, good revenue coming in. We were paying people well, and shortly before MLG purchased GotFrag, but that was a really memorable experience. Just kind of, I still see some of the pictures from that event floating around on Facebook and stuff like that. So that was a neat event.
So as you mentioned, a lot of people within esports have a lot of different roles and kind of a bunch of different responsibilities within one organization or within multiple organizations. Do you think that's something that hurts kind of esports as a whole, or is that something that helps develop people as professionals, and is that something that we should be sticking with?
I don't think it's a model for long-term success as this becomes more evolved and money becomes more readily available and basically the pie grows for everybody and all the companies involved. I don't think that'll be necessary anymore, but I definitely think that there's a great era of development for, young talent out there that gets to kind of, see how different organizations do things and gain experience through multiple organizations. I mean, I got my shot by just doing free stuff on a forum somewhere, so it's great. I've always kind of encouraged people who have worked for me, unless it's for a direct competitor, go out, go and work at different places, work at ESFI, work for MLG, just volunteer, get your experience and learn.
Would you like to streamline kind of your career and what you do for Complexity, and what direction would you like to see it going?
So for Complexity, Chief Operating Officer, I mean, I kind of do everything just like Jason does. I mean, Jason and I pretty much just run most of the show. We have several managers that work underneath us that, handle day-to-day operations and logistics and stuff like that. But, again, just like at Godfrag, everything from business development to the finances to the accounting to the partner management. I mean, that's a big part of our business and making sure our sponsors are happy and executing on their marketing activities and things like that. So day-to-day management of the staff. We have a website manager, but when we want to do redesigns, that's just kind of an area that I have a lot of experience in. So I get back into the website side, even though that's really, Jason's, one of his responsibilities, Jason Lake, is the website, and that's something he's always done well with from a content standpoint, and I jump in and help out when it's time to kind of reface ourselves or whatever. So where I'd like to see Complexity going, I mean, it's kind of where I'd like to see esports going. It's just to get bigger to where everybody's making a real salary and we call ourselves, it's a real company, if you will, quote unquote, whatever that means. But everybody is, doing this as a job. It's a hobby that has become a reality. All the gamers make a full-time salary, and plus their prize money. All the staff make a full-time salary, and we properly staff up, have PR firms. I'd love to see all that type of stuff happening, and I think we're almost there. I think we're close. But I've also said that many times over the last 10 years. So I don't want to jinx myself.
So I guess going back to the last 10 years, how did you get involved with the Championship Gaming Series, and what was your role within them?
So basically right at the time in which Godfrag was in the process of selling out to MLG. I don't mean that as selling out in a bad way. I just mean we were selling the company to MLG. I kind of had the opportunity to go on and be a general manager for one of the teams. I knew several of the people over there, Craig Levine, who owned Team 3D. He was consulting for them. And Jason Lake was moving on over there. But they approached me about being a general manager, and I accepted at the time. So I kind of left about 2 weeks prior to, or maybe a month prior to the actual official buyout of Godfrag to MLG. And I went over there and I helped with first, I was on very early prior to really any of the other general managers. So they flew me out and had me, helping with their website just because of my prior experience. And I think, honestly, they knew I wanted to do something different, so they got me in with the GM position, but I think they always wanted me to do something differently for them. And the more I got in there and the more I realized how messed up their online presence was and how, messed up a lot of things were, I just kind of realized that I could be more valuable to, the community, to the company, and to all of my friends that worked in esports if I took more of an executive position at the company where I could, kind of be that esports voice, if you will, within the company. And so I became the director of online marketing, and I worked for the ex-VP of marketing from Pepsi. He was my boss, Jason CatZ. And, I learned an awful lot there. And I left about a year prior to them pulling the plug on the whole thing. And I left mainly because I knew they were going to pull the plug at some point in time. I hadn't been told that, but the writing was on the wall. It was a very disappointing point in my life. I mean, I felt like I could have been that esports voice inside of the office there, but they just weren't listening. They had their own, big business ideas of how to do things. We had a chief operating officer from Yahoo, and his first things to do were to basically hire 17 people to do what myself and Brian Johnson, my associate there, did by ourselves for the first year. When we left, 17 people replaced us. That was kind of the mentality of things there, and so it got to the point where nothing was really getting done. It was a lot of planning, a lot of meetings, no decisions really were getting made, and it was just it was a difficult time, and I was unhappy. It wasn't what I signed up to do, and so I went back to my quote unquote real job in the oil and gas industry for software.
Do you find that it's best, because you're kind of saying how they hired, you had someone from Yahoo working with you, and they hired 17 people to kind of replace the job of 2 people. Do you think hiring within kind of the esports volunteer sort of staff base is important for leagues, for teams, for kind of anyone who wants to be successful within the industry?
I absolutely do. I mean, at some point in time, we will reach a critical mass where, maybe reaching outside and for some positions of esports to get, people that are experts at public relations or experts at marketing in general, and not necessarily, and then work with the community members to help guide their actions. I think that might happen at some point and be valuable. But, GotFrag would have never been anything if it were not for volunteers. I mean, GotFrag was completely founded and formed on volunteers. Complexity was completely founded and formed on volunteers. Almost every organization out there has been, has had volunteers in this community, just people that are passionate about esports working for them, even though they're not making anything. They're working because they believe in the vision. I mean, it's like socialism at its best, if you will. It's just it's really cool to see that happen.
So you mentioned that you worked in the oil and gas industry, again, doing marketing between CGS and Complexity. You also did marketing for COO. Can you talk about that time in your life?
Well, I still work for the oil and gas company, so I Complexity is my nights and weekends and everywhere in between job, and my 9 to 5 is a company called Wonderware, where we have software that basically monitors the wells and controls the pumps and all that kind of good stuff that gives us our oil and gas and helps them measure what they pull out of the ground. So I still do that. COO was something I did shortly after I left CGS. I went and worked for Charlie Plitt over at COO and did some stuff over there for helping with website redesigns, content, coverage, things like that. I moved more back into my GotFrag type of role over there.
So you have a strong background in marketing, but what made you decide to go back or go into team management after CGS, or I guess when you were coming back into esports after CGS, and why did you not decide to go into coverage?
Well, Jason's always done a really good job at the coverage, and we just kind of we all agreed that we would play to our strengths, and my background really has been in marketing, so a lot of what we do for these companies that pay us to do it is marketing. So we have to come up with these different promotions and these different types of plans that we execute on, these tournaments that we have to promote and run for our partners. So, operational and marketing are things that I've done a lot of. So that's really where I spend the bulk of my time when at Complexity. So and team management. I mean, I've always wanted to do something. I mean, I've always been a shadow figure in esports. I mean, I've done lots of things that are important that nobody will ever know about and all that kind of stuff, and I've always been fine with that. But at some point in time, I did want to come a little bit out of the shadows and say, hi, I'm here, and I'm still here doing this after 10 years. But and I, Jason's been a great friend of mine for a long time, and that's kind of why I went the different angle. I mean, when I went to CGS, it was honestly to go run the Dallas Venom, which Alex Conroy ended up doing because I chose to do something differently. But I guess it's something that I always wanted to try. I guess one of the few areas that I hadn't touched inside of esports.
So how did you and Lake and Conroy get together and think of rebuying Complexity?
Well, after CGS fell apart, and then subsequently Jason's Counter-Strike team left him. As I said, I've known Jason a long time, and I knew how hard he was going to take that. So I basically picked up the phone and I called him and just said, hey, man, if there's anything I can do to help you, get back on your feet, get some sponsors, whatever. Totally in my mind thinking I'll come in and help for a little while and step back out and do, my other things. I was actually going to help with the SFI at that point in time. That's really where I was. I was going to come on and do some stuff with Brent. And he called back the next day and just said, I want to take you up on your offer. I want to give you a portion of the company. I want you to be, my partner, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, okay. I wasn't sure what to say, but at that point in time, I knew he really needed me, and I didn't want to say no. So I went ahead and did that. And Alex came into the mix because he had reformed Jack's Money Crew and had acquired a Counter-Strike team that had some of the, beloved players of the time, or even before that, actually. People like Volcano and DeBears and people like that. So, that's kind of how Alex got into the mix. And Alex had his strengths of business development and just being an all-around fun guy. So that's kind of how it started. We all agreed to form a partnership under the Complexity banner, and that's what we did.
So whatever happened to Alex, because I know everyone knows you, everyone knows Lake, but no one really knows anything about Conroy. Is he still with Complexity, or has he left esports totally?
He's currently not in esports. He's he's always going to be part owner of the company, and we stay in touch. And I just saw him at CES actually, so he'll always be a good friend. But he's working on getting his real estate license in New York, and he's also doing club promotion, if you will. He gets, I guess, the pretty people to come to the clubs. That's kind of what his job is these days, right now at night. So that's what he's doing right now. I mean, I'm not going to – I think he might come back to esports at some point in time. He definitely does miss it, but right now that's what he's doing.
Okay. But he still owns a part of Complexity?
Yes.
Okay. A little bit ago, you mentioned on Live on 3 that Alex Garfield had been attempting to sort of start up some sort of gaming federation. Can you talk about that at all, or do you have any more details that you can share with us?
Honestly, not much has happened since that point. The teams have come together and talked a few times, and we have some similar goals, some disagreements, and things like that. But so far, there's really not much more that can really be reported on it because there's nothing definitive or of substance yet to really talk about. But the talks are still going on.
Do you think that we need, especially between the players and the tournaments and kind of maybe the messiness that kind of goes between them, like having MLG Winter Arena at the same time as the Azus Republic of Gamers, and then you have things like kind of the Complexity side, the Stephano issue. Do you think that we need a federation, something like KESPO or something like a G7 that actually works? Do we need that role of organization within esports?
I wish, in a nice utopia you wouldn't, but now, frankly, yes, you do. I mean, until there's enough money in this space to where, people are going to pay the consequences for poor behavior, especially like in the Stephano situation, that signing a contract and then, just saying, oh, just change my mind. That doesn't really work that way. But, and as far as leagues scheduling on top of each other, I don't know. I mean, I just think they should be more transparent with each other. If MLG's schedule's really been known for so long, then why wait until why wait till January 25th or whatever to let the other organizers know? I mean, there should be some collaboration between the organizers to say, hey, we're going to schedule this event at this time. Is that going to interfere with anything? Because there's plenty of weekends or weeks in the year to where you don't have to schedule on top of each other. I don't know that necessarily a team federation is going to be the answer to that side of things, but as far as handling issues with contract disputes or proper protocol for approaching a player or approaching a team, and what's fair for a buyout, and those types of issues, I think that we definitely need an organization like that to kind of govern ourselves, because there's really not much of a stick to hit anybody with. I mean, you can go through the expense of lawsuits and things like that, but does it really make a lot of sense to invest that kind of percentage of your revenue into going after somebody like that? I don't know. It just depends on the situation, but it would be a lot better if we had just an organization that had a stick behind it that could make sure that the leagues respected the federation, and if the federation said this player broke the rules, this player could no longer play in the leagues that are or that type of thing. That would be the ideal world, I think.
Who do you think should be championing this initiative?
Well, I think for right now, it has to start with the teams. I mean, we make it so the best players can get to these events, and compete and make sure the events have the viewership that they have, that they sell upon. So, we need the leagues need us. It's a very symbiotic relationship, but if the teams can come together and find some rules and some things together that work for them, that can be enforced by the to the players, and then subsequently have the leagues respect those rulings and things like that, then I think it can work there. So I think it does have to start with the teams, honestly.
Okay. With that being said, I think we're going to go to commercial break, so we'll take a few minutes out. Hi guys, my name is Jacqueline Geller, and I'm here with ESFI's EndGame. I'll be the host from this episode on. It's episode 4, and with me I have Jason Bass from Complexity Gaming. He's the COO. He's just taking some time to sit down and talk to us a little bit about his role within esports, some of his history within kind of our messy world that we live in. So we talked a little bit about your past, so I think we're going to talk a little bit about the future as well as kind of what's going on right now. So you were a big Counter-Strike player. You love the game yourself. How painful was it to stop supporting Counter-Strike from Complexity's side?
For me, I mean, I got to be honest. If it were up to me, just because I was looking at it from a pure dollars and cents versus ROI, we would have, dropped support for it a lot sooner than we did. It's always painful because, I do love the game and I'll always have fond memories of it. But from a business perspective, I honestly believe we carried that game a lot longer than we should have. I mean, there was still life for it over in Europe, but in the United States, after CGS, CGS killed Counter-Strike. There's just no doubt about that in the United States, basically. So there just wasn't a whole lot of sense. We weren't competitive with the rest of the world. It was just an expensive game that we held on to for way too long because of fond memories and pride.
Have you had an opportunity to take a look at CS:GO at all?
Yes, I have played it ever since the first day of beta, and honestly, I really have high hopes that they can fix some of the issues with it. But I saw a tweet from Heaton that made me really, really laugh. I mean, he set up a Twitter account just to tweet this out, and he said something to the effect, if they change the recoil, change the movement, change the way you aim, it could be a good game, something to that effect. And I wrote back, so basically if they rewrite everything, it could be a good game. So I was very, very disappointed. I'll be honest. I mean, there's a lot of, I watched Twitter go aflutter with the, people saying nice things, and I was very disappointed in the game, and as they progress, I'll keep checking it out to see if they are able to correct some of the problems, but it's not even something that I'll spend time playing at all. Just I have limited time to play games, and that's not where I'll spend my time.
What kind of conditions must be met for complexity to kind of adopt a game like CS:GO for a team?
Well, basically, I mean, there has to be a community adoption. I mean, you look at StarCraft 2, and you look at League of Legends, and you look at Dota 2, and just there's an audience there. There's numbers. There's events. Just by virtue of having events. I mean, honestly, like if you look at Counter-Strike today, Counter-Strike 1.6, the numbers that they'll get at a major tournament today are less than CatZ gets when he's just messing around on his stream. And that's a big deal. It's got to have the audience there. So if there's an audience, no matter my personal feelings about CS:GO, we'll absolutely look seriously about doing something there.
Okay. So you actually were on the market for two kind of Dota-like games. You had a Heroes of New Earth team, and you had a League of Legends team. And you just recently got rid of your LoL team. Do you want to kind of support that genre, or your experience negative?
No, not at all. We had a little bit of negative experience with the Heroes of New Earth team, but they're good guys, and I think they meant well. The League of Legends team, I got nothing negative to say about those guys at all. I mean, it just basically came down to, Michael Odell is a good friend of mine, and our team was, let's face it, not very competitive. They were all right, but they were never going to be the best. And Dignitas needed a player, and they wanted one of our players, so our best players. So we worked it out with the team, and we worked it out with Dignitas, and we made that happen. And the guys just decided they didn't want to continue on together at that point in time. So I mean, we're absolutely still looking in the League of Legends and Dota market. We've aggressively looked for a while for both of them, and the League of Legends scene, it just seems like there's about 6 good teams, and they're all kind of spoken for in one way or another. They've either got their own thing going, or they've signed to an organization. And as far as Dota 2 goes, for me, I'm kind of still in a wait and see mode. I don't know. They said they got 1 million viewers for their big event, and then the first time we can actually see what their viewers are, it was like 10,000. And it was, so it's a pretty big, differential there. But regardless, it's going to be a big game, but I just kind of want to see where it's going to go, what teams, might shake out after the beta is over and the game's actually out and people own it. And, so we're still very much in a looking for the right option there.
Do you think that Dota 2 will receive the same response as StarCraft? And do you think that the game will be featured kind of over LoL or over HoN, or do you not really necessarily have the kind of experience in that genre as other games?
Well, no, I'm okay. Old school Dota player. I love Dota, but it's Valve, and that's they went and spent $1 million on this big event, and that's wonderful. But until I see more, to me, that's just a PR stunt, and maybe they'll do the PR stunt once a year. That's good. But Counter-Strike grew as an esport despite Valve. I mean, they didn't really do things to help us. They didn't promote us. They didn't, most of the changes they made to the game were actually detrimental to esports in general, because they were more catering to that more public gamer, instead of the giving us a pro mod or whatever, something along those lines. Whereas, Blizzard to me and Riot, not just to me, they support our community. They actually promote what we're doing. They hold their own events. They pay for these events, and I think that really helps to make these two games stand head and shoulders above the rest. So the answer to the question is Dota is going to get support because it's Dota, and it's going to be a good game, and everything I hear is a good game, and it'll have the community support and it will have league support. But will it be as big as the other ones? I really don't know. It's hard to say because I don't think Valve's going to get behind it in any way like Riot and Blizzard do.
What kind of support? Sorry.
Oh, go ahead.
I just want to say, what kind of support ideally would you look for from developers for esports titles?
Ideally, they should at least coordinate with the leagues at the very least to see, what maps we're playing, what we don't like, what balance issues there are, and kind of either not necessarily structure, have maybe even a public and a professional mod, if you will, that just kind of allows the features we need for spectating, that we need for streaming, that we need for competition, for fairness, for cheating, whatever, all those things. They need to coordinate with esports to make it successful. And then, my goodness, when you sell millions of copies of your game and you have this audience that launches your game every single day, show them that, hey, there's this competition going on. You could actually play this game and win money. You could make a career out of this, highlight that fact. Don't hide it, and the Barcraft phenomenon, Blizzard's really gotten behind that, and that's wonderful, and the more publishers that actually get behind and what we're doing here and what we're all trying to grow here, the better off we all are, the better off their games are in the future, the better off that game will be. It's good.
Have you been to any Warcraft events?
Yes, I have been to a couple. I went to at BlizzCon, actually. I went to the big one that Alex Garfield and Complexity and everybody put together, and I've actually considered running a couple here in Houston. I haven't gotten around to it yet, but I probably will here in the near future.
That'll be a project for 2012?
Absolutely. Yeah, I almost did it for the MLG finals because I wasn't going to be able to make it. But I just didn't get around it. I got a local sports bar down here that I think would be a prime place to do it. I just didn't get around to talking to the owner to see if they would, A, they had the capability, and B, if they'd be willing.
I know that Evil Geniuses sponsored the Montreal Warcraft. That was, that 500, 600 person extravaganza in Montreal. Would the Houston one be a Complexity initiative or kind of a Jason Bass thing? Okay.
Complexity, creative initiative, something like that. I mean, it wouldn't. I'm not looking at throwing a major event or anything like that, but we'll give away some prizes and have a good time.
I like Warcrafts. They're always a good time.
They are.
Yeah. Mm. In the last couple of years, I guess going back to sponsors, we've seen the shift of Complexity going from kind of this underfunded underdogs to one of the richest esports organizations in the world. You have Creative Sound Blaster, PNY, you have a full list of sponsorships. What do you kind of attribute that to?
Well, it's a lot of different things. I mean, a couple of things. I mean, getting the initial sponsorship is incredibly challenging, but keeping it after the first year is even more challenging. So, Alex Conroy did a really good job at meeting some of the creative folks at CES right when we first started this thing, several years ago. And we've taken that from a very small deal to a good sized one, and done some really good things with them. And and I've started doing some business development. Andrew Dudinsky, Bravo, he does business development for us now as well. So we've just made it more of a focus, and we've had some good success. I mean, I don't know that we've signed enough partners, if you will, but we've definitely had really good success at growing the ones that we have to, show them the value of what we provide, and make them want to pay more for them, more for that value, and do things to augment that value as well, as far as running events or whatever.
So as far as sponsorship goes, esports is kind of starting to get baby steps into lifestyle brands. You see people like Red Bull and Monster Energy, a lot of energy drinks, and then when you go to MLG, you see your Dr. Peppers and things like that getting into esports. How hard is it to get someone like that to take esports seriously? Do you find that there's still kind of this big wall that you have to break down?
There is a wall, and if you meet the right person and can show them. I mean, I guess let me step back, because I think sales inside of esports has always been really challenging. Because first of all, as a team, you're kind of selling something that's it's very much a value sell. I have to convince somebody that I can do something that has, it's branding, it's exposure, it's messaging, it's things like that, which is, I mean, look at companies left and right, they slash their marketing budgets, people don't believe in marketing, they don't think it works, yada, 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 so you got to get over that hurdle to begin with. You're selling something, you're selling something that doesn't exist. You're selling something that, a concept, idea, a vision. So that's hard. And then, before you can even get there, you got to convince them that competitive gaming is actually a place they should care about, and they should spend their money there, and versus American Idol or whatever, something else. Bigger spend, but, something else they might spend their money on versus esports. And once you convince them of that, then I got to convince them that, well, you should spend it with complexity because of X, Y, and Z. So, it's that kind of 3-hurdle race, and it's tough to get over all those hurdles. And it's very tough when you talk to just somebody in a lifestyle company, a big company that has no idea what you do, no idea what competitive gaming is, and that's tough. But I think we're hitting a critical mass now where more and more people have at least heard about what we're doing, and they're taking a look. So I think 2012 will be a good growing year, and maybe 2013 can be, the big one if the numbers continue to go up as far as the audience.
So when you speak with an outside sponsor that doesn't really know about esports, what kind of things do you explain to them? How do you explain it, and say what sorts of numbers and kind of catches would you use to kind of reel them in?
Well, I mean, it's a long process. You got to catch them with a marketing deck. I mean, I use lots of the numbers that MLG releases. I show some of our web stats. I show a lot of the Twitch TV stats for our players, and for what we do with some of our shows. I've taken lots of screen grabs of, League of Legends at DreamHack when they hit 150,000 or 225, whatever, some obnoxious number. But, that's something I use to sell against. I mean, these are real numbers that can't be faked, that are, something attributable to what we do. And the key thing with our demographic is, it's the demographic everybody's after. I mean, it's that 18 to 34. It's that prime demographic where, and even younger, where they're making their brand decisions that are going to stay with them for the rest of their lives. And, so that's the nice thing that we do have going for us, is that it's the demographic that all marketers want to capture. And, we've got kind of a captive audience. We've got this audience of that prime demographic, especially for the endemics. I mean, it's great, for the Intels and the creatives and the PNYs of the world. You need a computer part. These are the people buying computer parts. So those are some of the messages.
Okay, perfect. On that note, we're going to go to our second commercial break.
Okay. I'll be right back.
Okay. Hi everyone, my name is Jacqueline Geller, and I'm here for ESFI's EndGame with COO of Complexity, Jason Bass. And I just want to give you a heads up that if you are liking this program, you can definitely follow ESFI on Twitter at ESFI World, and then also like us on Twitch and find us on Facebook, also ESFI World. You'll have all of our content, notifications about our streams, that sort of thing. So show some love if you like what we're doing. So we're going to talk a little bit more about the team itself, Complexity. So let's jump right into it. You've picked up a lot of players. You've dumped, I guess to be nice, a lot of players. Are there any regrets that you've had for Complexity in terms of your pickups over the last 2 years?
I don't have any regrets over the pickups. I mean, I do, you know, and it's hard to regret some of the things that happened with, say, Stephano and Naniwa and the Han team. I mean, when you look at those things on their face, you know, just as individual isolated incidents, they don't look very good from the outside, and I can certainly see that. Each one was a unique situation that, you know, I think that we reacted in the only ways that we could. I mean, the Stephano thing happened to us. I mean, that's not something that we had any control over. I mean, somebody signs a contract and then announces the next day on a talk show that, oh, I changed my mind. That's tough. Naniwa, I mean, it was just difficult to work with him, and we just couldn't come to, you know, any kind of common ground 1 month into our agreed upon deal. And so, you know, we went to Quantic, and they bought the contract. You know, he's a great player, and I hope that he will, you know, calm down on some of the antics and things like that he has some challenges with. But you know, if he does that, he can be the real deal. But so to say I have regrets, I regret that these situations happened, and they happened the way they did, but I don't regret the way that we handled them. I think that we handled them in the best possible way we could that made the most sense for everybody involved. And, so.
So you have both Triggers Down and Final Boss, who are MLG entities. Have they been acquired by Complexity as a third-party organization, and who obtains the rights to them?
Well, I mean, no. I mean, the Final Boss and Triggers Down, those names belong to MLG, and just out of homage to those brands that were built, we kept them as part of the Complexity banner. I mean, I guess we technically could have just called them Complexity instead of Complexity.TriggersDown or Complexity.FinalBoss, but to lose that name recognition, I felt from a business perspective that it didn't make a lot of sense to just dump the names. So, I mean, to answer the question, I mean, the Final Boss name and the Triggers Down name definitely still belong to MLG. We don't own those.
So you find that that's good for something like Complexity? Because I know Sir Scoots from Evil Geniuses has a very hard standpoint that there's kind of no place for, a cross-counter Evil Geniuses or a Triggers Down Evil Geniuses within their brand. So you find that you don't agree with that statement?
No, I don't. I think that, it's like if, I don't know, what's a good example? Dell goes to buy Alienware and suddenly decides I'm going to kill the Alienware. That's just be the dumbest move ever to kill a brand like that. For something that has value, a brand that has value. I as a marketer, I believe to retain that value. To bring the value statements of the two organizations together and build a mix of it. So I think the Complexity cross-counter deal is a great innovative thing that we've done. The Complexity MVP thing is a great innovative thing that we've done. It's helped both brands, and they're all different types of deals, but we've got a world-class fighting division, and we still have all the name recognition our partners get from cross-counter and the exposure they get from the shows that those guys produce. So, Scott, and I worked together for a long time at Gotfrag, and on this area we've always kind of disagreed, and he's always been very proprietary, I guess you will say, and has that mentality. I don't know that he's right or wrong, but for me, I think it does make sense. It doesn't make sense in every situation. If I just pick up some random team, or if I were to pick up a League of Legends team or something like that, I mean, I'm not gonna. They're going to become Complexity, or it's just what it is, But for an established brand that has a large following and a large audience, in some cases that makes sense, and for us, it has made sense.
So you have so many teams within your organization. Do the individual teams feel unified under the Complexity banner? And say, how much of a stake does someone like Mike Ross take in CatZ play beyond the obvious benefit of just bringing in more sponsors?
So how invested are they in the Complexity brand? Is that what you're kind of asking?
How unified do they feel? Like, does someone like Mike Ross take an interest in CatZ career, or would someone like Drew B kind of take an interest in Final Boss? I guess Final Boss Triggers Down.
Yeah, they definitely follow one another. I mean, and the Halo guys follow StarCraft 2 religiously. They love it. And I know some of our StarCraft players watch some of the fighters and things like that, but it's all a personal preference thing. I mean, they're definitely going to root for their teammates and things like that. So there's definitely a vested interest there.
Okay. So how difficult is it to evaluate players with so many games beyond their placements and their viewer draw? Like, how do you kind of compare players across different platforms?
It's really challenging. I mean, especially the more diverse the games get, and the more of these games that are building an audience. Even though I played Dota and I understand Dota, I don't necessarily know what makes a good team. I mean, I was okay at the game, but I was never great at it. But so Counter-Strike, it was a lot easier for Jason and I to evaluate talent. I mean, we were intimately involved with the game, and we were intimately involved with the community. And I mean, we're getting to that point with StarCraft now. I mean, we both play a lot, and we both enjoy the game and understand the game and participate in the community. So, but it'll be impossible to do that for every possible game that we're looking at. So we have to rely on people, and that was another reason why the cross-counter thing made sense. I mean, we had two of the most famous experts in the game who were going to advise us on which players were the best ones to grab. And, that's how we ended up with Combo Fiend and Filipino Champ, and, it helps. So we have to have these ambassadors within the games to really help us make the decisions. We have people on staff that are, with the Mobile Weekly show, we got lots of great guys that help us with the MOBA scene. And, so we can't know it all, and we never will. And we recognize that, and that's the first thing you have to do is recognize it.
So, of course, since you have your own little fighting game team, well, not little, like pretty powerhouse fighting game team, where's the complexity you take on the whole fighting game versus esports situation, especially with complexity kind of being that esports side that is involved? And where do you find that kind of esports big money can fit in within the fighting game community?
The mentality is just, if they want to just stay small, and never really... all right, let me step back. I know they're out there trying to get sponsorships and trying to sell what they have, but they're not going to be able to sell it if they want to stay, small and contained amongst themselves and closed off from everybody else. It's a closed off viewpoint, and I mean, honestly, I think that some of the people making that case are people that benefit from it being closed off and not open to the other organizations and things like that. So, I know the Mike Ross and Gutex, they get it, and they're some of our best brand representatives as far as, going to trade shows with our partners and things like that and doing content. So, the rest of them, I don't know where it'll go, but I don't understand the mentality. I don't understand it at all. It doesn't make sense to me. So I don't know.
Okay. So in 2011, you had kind of a plethora of different pickups. You had some good success with, lesser known pickups like Trimaster, and then you also targeted kind of big ticket players like Stephano and Naniwa. What's kind of the method to your madness for scouting new players, and what do you look for?
Well, I mean, one of the reasons why we have CatZ is he's one of the best talent scouts out there. I mean, he told us about Stephano many, many, many months before we ever did anything with him. But when he says somebody's an up and comer and they're going to be something, he's usually right. I mean, if you just look at the talent that came out of Root over time, they're all solid players for the most part. So he's a big factor that we weigh in. Right now we're looking for big names. We want people who are going to be on the stage, and we're very much in the hunt for those big names. We're looking in Korea. We're looking all around. So hopefully we'll find the right candidates here soon, and we'll have some announcements.
So you do want to pick up Koreans as opposed to kind of just sticking with the MVP co-partnership?
We'll stick with the MVP co-partnership, but we're definitely going to have some Korean players, hopefully, that are just under the complexity banner. And the MVP partnership's been great. Choi's great over there, and Dong Regu is fantastic, obviously.
I like DRG.
And some of there are other players as well. I mean, he's got a great organization over there, and we've had a good relationship so far.
What kind of benefits do you find that complex? You see a lot of the MVP immediate benefits between it. Players like DRG get to come and compete at MLGs that they wouldn't necessarily have had the opportunity to. What kind of are the benefits that complexity gets out of the partnership? And would you say that it's 50-50?
Yeah, I definitely say it's 50-50. I mean, they get the benefits of their players get to come out and experience things, like you said, that they wouldn't have normally experienced, and it enables Choi to do different incentive programs with his players and keep them happy and beyond what they just do inside of Korea. For us, we get guys on that main stage, wearing the complexity banner and wearing our partner banners. Our partners really, most of them are really making avid pushes inside of Korea right now, and they're they're doing a lot of content and different things with the MVP players over there. So it's been very beneficial all around for all of us.
Something that I really loved in 2011 was the Complexity Academy. And what were the goals for the program? How do you feel like it went? And is it something you're continuing?
We are continuing it. I think, from how it went standpoint, I think it went great. I mean, we found Goswser, so, he's, a great up-and-coming talent, and that was kind of the goal of the program, was to find that diamond in the rough that nobody had found yet, and I think we found one, and we'll continue to provide other people that opportunity to go to an MLG event or a couple of events if they win the tournaments, and get a chance to be recognized and show what they've got. So it's been a good success. Michael Shane Twix, who was one of our professional World of Warcraft players, actually runs that program for us now. So.
Okay, so speaking actually of Goswser, good segue on your own part. He's in a little bit of controversy this week because of a little bit of show match he did with TT1 this week earlier. Where do you think it's the team's responsibility to step in, and how does Complexity deal with player conduct and issues that arise?
All of our players receive a very detailed player packet of what is acceptable and not acceptable behavior, and sadly, many times we just have to deal with these things after the fact and slap them on the hand or whatever, and let them know that just behaving like that's just not acceptable. I think it's blown way out of proportion, as most things usually are, but we hope that they have read the packet and they just kind of live by those guidelines, but we find in many cases they either forget or they just go back to I'm the 18-year-old kid trolling the forums type of thing, and you have to represent something more when you're part of a professional organization, and we try to instill that in them, and sometimes we just don't get that message across until after they mess up the first time, and hopefully it doesn't happen again.
Do you find that you have to do a lot of kind of the big brother or fathering role, where kind of making these little kids grow up?
Yes. I don't, they're not kids by any stretch, but, there definitely is a lot of mentoring that has to happen, and education, and, just on the business that we're in and what this is all about. It's not just about getting a plane ticket and going to compete in an event. It's about so much more. I mean, every time they represent themselves, they're representing our brand, they're representing the partners' brands, they're representing Creative and PNY and QPAD, and they have to keep that in mind. So there definitely is a lot of education that has to happen there.
So after working with MVP for a while, what's your opinion on the health of the Korean StarCraft 2 scene? You were definitely a big part of bringing on Creative as one of their sponsors, and do you think that the economy or the money in the Korean scene is a lot weaker than the Western scene? Is that something that needs to grow?
Even though we have a nice partnership over there, that side of it's very kind of closed off to me, and I think they do that intentionally. I know how most of the organizations over here operate as far as their policies on prize money and salaries and things like that. My impression is their players do not get salaries for the most part, if at all. And my impression is maybe a great deal of the prize money percentage-wise goes back to the team and not to the players. I wouldn't be surprised if it was like 75% or something like that. I don't know, no idea. But I don't. From a sponsorship perspective, I mean, some of them have some good sponsors behind them, and they've got some good things going. But when you see players have to get Reddit to pay for their plane flight over when they have an organization backing them, I mean, that's that should speak something about what kind of money's over there. I'm not an expert, so I really don't know. I'm just, the only things that I can see are I can take these little different data points that I see from my dealings and from what I see, and yes, it seems like they're quite a ways behind on a business level standpoint and revenue standpoint as we are. Even though they're very advanced from a skill level, I think the organizations have yet to catch up with the skill.
Okay. So coaching is something that's definitely used in Korea. Every team house has a coach involved. Is that something you'd like to see for complexity after working with Coach Choi?
Well, I mean, Coach Choi really is, from my dealings with him, he's not much. He doesn't do much things different than what Jason and I do for our organization and what Scott Ford, our player manager, does. I mean, it's he's very much in a management mentoring type of role. I know that they have a coach that lives in the house that does help them. I don't know his name, but that maybe helps with replays and analyzing different things. But ultimately, I think that's where we need to get. Right now, I think the players are so hungry and they have the time and capability to kind of invest the time they need to do for figuring out opponent strategies and figuring out strategies for themselves and different builds and different things like that. I think that they can kind of handle that for themselves. But I think an objective opinion always helps. It's just seeing things once you're outside of your own head. Oh, wow, yeah, I didn't even notice I did that. Or, I think that can always help. And we had a coach in Counter-Strike for a while. It's been done. So it's, Andy was a coach for Bravo, was a coach for the Halo team. I mean, it's a valuable position. So I think that, yes, ultimately you get there.
Okay. What's your opinion about player salaries being made public? This was definitely something that came up a lot when Chris Loringer got switched from Liquid to EG. What are your thoughts?
I just don't think we're there yet as a scene. I mean, I think that, that's the ultimate goal. When people are making the type of salaries that you want to brag about, then, I mean, you get there, you get more transparent, but I think a lot of people believe that this esports pie is a lot bigger than it is, and it's getting there, but it's not as big as people think it is. I mean, I think the numbers have finally caught up to the viewership numbers have finally caught up to something that could make it there, but it's not as big and as lucrative as people might think it is, and we're still very much organically growing. The teams are, the leagues are, the players are, the fans are. Everything's just still much at kind of an infancy state. I mean, I'd say a little beyond our infancy right now, but we're just not at the point where salaries should be public, and nor do we have an organizing body that could handle such a type of thing. I mean, we've got a few steps before we get there, in my opinion.
Speaking of steps that need to be taken, what's your current state or take on the state of esports journalism, and what do you think needs to be improved or maybe done differently?
I think, coming from this world, it goes back to kind of what I was saying about how big we are or how big we think we are, and that's how big we are versus how big we think we are. They're two different things. And for an esports journalist, you're almost forced to walk a fine line, because just like the teams need the leagues, so does ESFI, so do the journalists. And we were always under the threat of CPL banning us. I mean, they did ban us from one event. Godfrey got banned from an event because we reported on something that Angel Munoz didn't approve of, and that would never happen in the real world, so, but we still lived in this and even today, we still live in this closed ecosystem that, one person can cut you off at the knees and kill your business just like that. And until we're out of that closed ecosystem and we're big enough to where everybody can sustain themselves without, the need of one another, I think it's tough to answer that question. I mean, the obvious answer is it needs to be completely objective. It needs to be hard-hitting. It needs to, go ask the questions. It needs to, go after the leagues and the teams when they make a statement that doesn't make sense. Well, keep asking the questions so you get an answer that's right. It just has to be real. It has to be honest. We don't need to toss a bunch of softballs here left and right. I mean, softballs are nice every once in a while, but ask the questions that the people really actually want to know. And I don't think that we've gotten there, and I know at Got Frag that was always one of my biggest frustrations is that, and Trevor Schmidt's Midway's frustration. I mean, he always wanted to ask the tough questions, and Lee and I were usually the ones going, well, now, Trevor, if we do that, then, this could happen or that could happen, and we were all right. It was just, what should you do and what can you do are two different questions.
So you've kind of seen the little bubbles of esports. You've been around the scene for as long as there has been a scene. Do you think the current rise of esports is different, and do you think it's more sustainable than other bubbles that we've seen in the past?
I do think it is different and more sustainable, and that's mainly because I credit Twitch TV with a lot of that. Just kind of bringing this community together, making it more open and transparent. The numbers are there for everybody to see. Makes it very easy for people to watch. You don't necessarily have to own the game to see what's going on. That was it was a limitation with Counter-Strike that you had to own the game in order to watch HLTV. And then when streaming started coming about, just the sheer expense of having to purchase the equipment to stream it properly and having to purchase ungodly expensive bandwidth to do it just made it just to the point where very few people could do it. So it just didn't make sense. But it's just opened up a whole new world for a lot of different things. It makes it easy to stream what you're doing. It makes it, where the bandwidth doesn't cost you a dime. I mean, I don't know how they support all the bandwidth, but that's because it's still expensive for bandwidth. But it's great, and I think that really puts us in a different place than we were in the past, to where no one publisher can kill esports. No, one league can shut down and kill it altogether. I mean, if MLG were to die tomorrow, that would definitely not be a good thing. But I think we'd still survive.
So going to the leagues, with your knowledge of CGS, how do you think the leagues like MLG, NASL, and IPL are handling their growth within esports? And what are some of the mistakes that you think each league has made, and what have they done right?
Well, so what were are these all of them, or just which ones did you say again?
IPL, NASL, and MLG. So kind of definitely more StarCraft related.
So my biggest complaint with MLG for a long time was, that same type of proprietary mentality, that, closed off ecosystem that we were talking about. They were very controlling over, they wanted to own the players, they wanted to own the teams, they wanted to own everything. And, they've really done a great job in the past couple of years of shifting out of that mode and starting to be a little more transparent and doing some good things. I mean, one thing that I've always been impressed with MLG, and what has been great for their success, is they have always grown organically. They've had venture capital, yes, but as far as listening to the community, their audience has grown because they've listened to the community. I've seen many leagues in the past, CPL with the World Tour, they would just we're going to do Painkiller and people are going to watch it because we're going to put a lot of money behind it. Or a CGS, people are going to watch it because we're going to put money behind it. No, they're not. They're not going to watch it. You have to listen to them and do what they want. That you have to show them what they want to see, or else they're not going to tune in. So MLG's always been pretty good about that. NASL. Russell does a great job over there. I think they've had some production problems, and they've had some, issues with the Korean players, and I hope that they can get that, shaken out. For me, I think NSL is it's just too much content. It's going on all the time, and it never stops. And IPL used to annoy me. They were always doing the stuff all the time, and you get to the point where you're so. I mean, I think we're oversaturated with StarCraft content, and it almost just seems to blur all together. You don't even know what's happening anymore, and you barely even pay attention. And I think that's tough. IPL, I think they've done some scheduling problems. I think they some of the stuff that I'm hearing about what they're doing this year, I don't even know what they're thinking, but I can't comment on that because it's just rumors. But I don't know. I don't know. IPL is another one like CGS. It scares me. it's certainly not like CGS in the sense that it's a bubble that could pop and we just all go away, because I don't think they've made a big enough splash to make that happen. But I don't know what the motivations are there. Is I'm doing this as a profit center? Is this a new business unit that they actually want to build off, or is it a novelty marketing expense that they're just throwing some money at to see? Let's see let's throw stuff against the wall and see what sticks. I don't know where their motivations lie. So I think IPL had some great production value. I think they did a fantastic job on their first live event as far as the stream quality, and other than the technical challenges they had, of course, which everybody does have. But from the games that you actually did get to watch, I think they were wonderful, and I think they really raised the bar on what watching StarCraft 2 could be like. And I think MLG quickly scrambled and made some appropriate changes on their ends as well.
Okay, perfect. So I just kind of have one last question for you. How do you balance kind of between family and work and life and esports, and how do you, I don't know, what would you recommend and what kind of advice would you give to the new up-and-comers who need to learn these skills, especially balance and kind of building a career?
I am definitely not the it's hard for me to give advice. I mean, I can give advice, but I have a unique situation. For the last 10 years of my life, the whole time that I've been doing esports, my quote-unquote real job has been working from home. So where I'm sitting right now is pretty much where I work. I travel from time to time, and I do different things around town, but for the most part I'm sitting right here, which enables me to be on Skype and check emails from my 3 different email accounts, and just kind of respond to things as they come in, and just wear a bunch of different hats. And I've always been really good at multitasking. But I mean, I think that the best advice I could give is, I learned a long time ago that typically, this is rare for me to be sitting at my computer at this time. I mean, I'm usually at 7 or 8 o'clock at night, I'm done. It's family time, or what, even before that, dinner or whatnot. But I used to stay up all night and work on this stuff, but I've learned to balance my time to the point where there are different compartments. There's real job, there's complexity, there's my family, and you just have to have that balance. You can't. The more you teeter in one direction or another, the worse off your lifestyle is going to be, and your life's going to be. And and then learning to multitask is, it's a commonly used term, but being able to quickly switch between different things, which my belief is gamers are the best at doing that type of thing, because we've kind of grown up in that lifestyle, and that will really help you in life, and to continue to build that skill set up to be able to balance all these different things that you've got going on.
Okay, perfect. Do you have any shout outs or any thank yous that you'd like to give?
Thanks for having me. I think ESFI is doing a great job, and as always, thanks to our sponsors, Sound Blaster and PNY and QPad, Origin PC. So I think that's all I've got.
Okay, perfect. So thank you everyone for joining us. Again, my name is Jacqueline Geller, and I'm with ESFI World. If you like what we've done, definitely check us out. We're on Facebook, Twitter, and you can follow us also here on Twitch, just ESFI World. So thank you so much, and have a great night.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Jason.
Bye.
What?